The Fall of Helios 5. In a flash of searing plasma, the Elysian hovercraft exploded, sending General Kos tumbling through the air like a rag doll. He crashed into the blood-soaked dirt of Helios 5, broken and bleeding, abandoned by his own troops. At just 25 Elysian years old, Kos was a prodigy of war, rising through the ranks on cunning and brutality. But now, he lay alone, betrayed by the very soldiers he had led in a merciless assault on a human mining colony. Commander Roger Porter approached the burning wreckage cautiously, rifle at the ready. His recon squad fanned out behind him, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of an alien ambush. Porter knew that Kos, the butcher of unarmed civilians, would receive no mercy from human hands. By all rights, they should put a bullet in the alien's brain and leave his corpse for the scavengers. But something stayed Porter's hand, an unshakable sense that this was a pivotal moment upon which the future balanced. "Get the med kit," Porter ordered, his eyes never leaving Kos's mangled form. "Stabilize him and prep for evac back to base." His squad protested vehemently, calling the plan suicide. The aliens would tear the base apart to recover their general. Porter silenced them with a sharp glare. Humanity was better than this, stronger than the barbarism they fought against. Saving Kos could turn the tide, yielding vital intel on Elysian tactics and weapons. More than that, it could light a spark of doubt in the young general's mind, sowing the seeds of an alliance that could save countless lives on both sides. As human medics fought to keep Kos alive, the entire base prepared for war. The aliens would come, that much was certain. Soldiers whispered mutinously in shadowed corridors, their hatred for Kos outweighing any hope of strategic advantage. Porter knew his command hung by a thread, but he would not yield. Not now when the future of Helios 5 and humanity itself lay in the balance. The road ahead promised only pain and sacrifice. But if Kos could be turned, if this act of compassion could forge an unlikely partnership between bitter foes, then perhaps there was still hope for humans and aliens alike. The awakening in the base's cramped medical bay, Lieutenant Sarah Chen hovered over the comatose form of General Kos, adjusting IV lines and monitoring the alien's vital signs. His skin, mottled with bruises, contrasted starkly against the sterile white of the bandages that swathed his thin frame. Chen couldn't help but marvel at the otherworldly elegance of his facial features, so different from her own. She glanced up as Commander Porter entered the room, his weathered face etched with fatigue. "Any change?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. Chen shook her head. "His condition is stable, but he shows no signs of regaining consciousness." She hesitated, then added, "I've been studying his anatomy, trying to understand how his body works. The aliens are so different from us, but in some ways, they're remarkably similar." Porter nodded, his gaze fixed on Kos's still form. "We need him, Chen, not just for the information he might provide, but for the chance to end this war without more bloodshed." Outside the medical bay, the base hummed with tension. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of an Elysian attack. In the armory, Captain Reeves oversaw the distribution of weapons and ammunition, his face grim. Corporal Hansen paced the halls, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. He couldn't understand why Porter insisted on protecting the enemy general. Kos was a monster responsible for the deaths of countless human civilians. He deserved to die, not be coddled in the medical bay. As the days dragged on, Chen spent every spare moment at Kos's bedside, studying his physiology and monitoring his condition. She talked to him, telling stories of Earth's oceans and mountains, of the great cities that had risen from the ashes of war. She hoped that somehow her words might reach him through the veil of unconsciousness. One night, as Chen dozed in a chair beside Kos's bed, Hansen slipped into the medical bay, a knife clutched in his hand. He moved silently to the alien's bedside, his face twisted with hatred. Just as he raised the knife to strike, Chen awoke with a start. She leapt to her feet, putting herself between Hansen and Kos. "Stop!" she cried, her voice ringing through the quiet room. "You can't do this!" Hansen sneered at her, his eyes cold. Get out of my way, Chen. This bastard deserves to die. Chen stood her ground, her heart pounding. She searched for the right words, the words that might make Hansen see reason. If we kill him, we're no better than the aliens, she said softly. We have to be better than that. We have to show them that there's another way. For a long moment, Hansen wavered, the knife trembling in his grip. Then, with a muttered curse, he lowered his arm and stalked out of the room. Chen sagged against the bed, relief washing over her. She looked down at Kos, at the slow rise and fall of his chest. "I won't let them hurt you," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I promise." The cost of compassion. In the command center, Porter studied the latest intelligence reports, his brow furrowed. The aliens were massing their forces, preparing for a final assault on the base. Time was running out. He thought of Kos, lying unconscious in the medical bay. If they could just reach him, make him see the truth about his people, maybe they could find a way to end this war without more death. It was a desperate hope, but it was all they had. "Double the patrols," Porter ordered, turning to Reeves. "Reinforce the perimeter. We have to be ready for anything." As the base braced for the coming storm, Chen kept her vigil at Kos's bedside, praying for a miracle. And deep in the recesses of the Elysian mind, a flicker of consciousness stirred, drawn toward the light of her voice. Days stretched into weeks as Chen maintained her vigil over Kos's still form. The Elysian general's vital signs remained stable, but he showed no signs of waking. Chen's eyes grew heavy as she checked his monitors for the 1,000th time. A soft groan broke the silence. Chen's head snapped up, fatigue forgotten. Kos's eyes flickered open, unfocused and confused. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse from disuse. Chen leaned forward, her heart racing. "You're safe in our medical bay. How do you feel?" Kos's eyes darted around the room, panic rising in his voice. "Humans! Why am I here? What have you done to me?" Chen raised her hands in a placating gesture. "We saved you. Your hovercraft was destroyed and you were badly injured. We've been treating you for weeks." Kos struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. "Why? I'm your enemy. You should have left me to die." "That's not our way," Chen said softly. She gently pushed him back onto the bed. "Please try to stay still. You're still healing." Kos glared at her, but exhaustion won out. He sank back onto the pillow, his breathing labored. A new understanding. Over the next few days, Chen spent every waking moment with Kos, answering his questions and tending to his needs. At first he was hostile and distrustful, his eyes narrowing with suspicion every time she approached. But gradually his demeanor began to soften. The walls he had built around himself, walls forged in the fires of war and reinforced by years of indoctrination, began to crack. One evening, as Chen changed his bandages, Kos finally asked the question that had been gnawing at him since he regained consciousness. "Tell me about your world, Earth. What's it like?" Chen's eyes lit up, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. "We have vast oceans, towering mountains, and forests that stretch as far as the eye can see. Our cities are marvels of technology and art, but there's still so much wilderness left untouched. It's a place of contrasts, harsh and gentle, ancient and new, all at once." As she spoke, Kos found himself captivated by the passion in her voice. He had never heard anyone speak of their home world with such reverence. It was as if Earth was more than just a place. It was a living, breathing entity, deserving of love and protection. For the first time, he wondered if the propaganda he had been fed all his life was wrong. Could it be that humans were not the primitive, barbaric creatures he had been taught to despise? Commander Porter's visits were less frequent, but no less impactful. During one such visit, Kos couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. "Why did you save me?" he asked Porter. "After everything I've done to your people?" Porter's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Because we believe in the inherent worth of all sentient life. We fight to protect our freedom and our way of life, not out of hatred for your kind." Kos frowned, the answer not sitting well with him. "But the Elysian Empire brings order and prosperity to the galaxy. We uplift primitive species, show them a better way of life. Is that what they told you?" Porter's voice was gentle, almost pitying. The Empire subjugates and exploits. Those who resist are crushed. We've seen entire worlds stripped of resources, their populations enslaved or worse. Koss opened his mouth to argue, but then closed it again. Doubt gnawed at him. Could everything he'd been taught be a lie? The thought unsettled him deeply. As the days passed, Koss found himself looking forward to Chen's visits. Her kindness and genuine interest in his culture fascinated him. He began to see humans not as inferior beings to be conquered, but as a species with their own rich history and vibrant culture. It was a revelation that shook him to his core. The battle for survival, the fragile calm that had settled over the base, was shattered by the sound of distant explosions. Alarms blared throughout the corridors, sending soldiers scrambling to their posts. Porter burst into the medical bay, his face grim. "They're here," he announced, his voice tight with urgency. "The Elysian forces have arrived. High General Theos is leading the assault. We're under heavy bombardment." Koss's blood ran cold. Theos, his mentor, his father figure, had come for him. But at what cost? The human base was about to be overwhelmed, and it was all because of him. Porter turned to Koss, his eyes intense. "We need your help. Your knowledge of Elysian tactics might be our only chance to escape." Koss hesitated, torn between his loyalty to the Empire and his growing respect for the humans who had shown him compassion. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, suffocating. Chen placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but insistent. "Please," she said softly, "help us survive this." In that moment, Koss made his choice. He nodded, his voice steady. "What do you need to know?" As the base shook around them, Koss worked feverishly with Chen and Porter, poring over star charts and tactical displays. He revealed the patterns in Elysian patrol routes, the blind spots in their sensor grids. "There," Koss said, pointing to a small moon on the holographic display. "If we can reach it, the mineral deposits should mask our energy signatures." Porter nodded grimly. "It's our best shot. I'm ordering a full evacuation. We leave in 30 minutes. The next half hour was chaos. Soldiers and civilians streamed towards the waiting transports, carrying what little they could. Chen helped Koss to his feet, supporting him as they made their way through the crumbling corridors. They reached the last transport just as another explosion rocked the base. Koss stumbled, but Chen held him steady as they strapped in. He caught a glimpse of the devastation outside. The only home he had known for months was being reduced to rubble. The transport lurched into the air, dodging debris and enemy fire. Koss felt Chen's hand slip into his, squeezing gently. He returned the pressure, his pupils dilating from the enormity of what he had done. As they broke atmosphere, Koss stared out the viewport at the stars beyond. For the first time in his life, he had no idea what the future held. But as he looked at Chen's determined face, he knew he had made the right choice. The transport banked sharply, heading for the distant moon and an uncertain future. Behind them, the elite Elysian fleet loomed, a dark promise of the challenges that lay ahead. The turning point. The transport shuddered as it exited Helios 5's atmosphere, joining a ragtag fleet of human ships fleeing the devastation below. Koss clutched the armrests of his seat, his eyes fixed on the monitor as his former home dwindled to a distant speck. "Plot a course for Amalthea," Commander Porter ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Koss, we need those Elysian defensive protocols now." Koss nodded, pushing aside his conflicted emotions. He limped to the navigation console, Chen supporting him as he moved. His fingers flew across the holographic interface, inputting a series of complex codes. "There," he said, pointing to a small moon orbiting a gas giant. "Amalthea's mineral composition should mask our energy signatures, but we'll need to thread the needle between these two patrol routes." Porter studied the display, then nodded grimly. "It's our best shot. All ships, follow these coordinates precisely." As the fleet maneuvered through the treacherous path Koss had laid out, Chen kept a watchful eye on his vital signs. "How are you holding up?" she asked softly. Koss managed a weak smile. "I've been better, but I'm alive, thanks to you." The journey to Amalthea was tense, every moment fraught with the possibility of detection. When they finally touched down on the moon's craggy surface, A collective sigh of relief rippled through the survivors. The next few days were a blur of activity as the humans established a makeshift base. Koss found himself working alongside Chen and Porter, poring over star charts and tactical displays as they dissected Elysian battle strategies. "Your people are remarkable," he said to Chen one evening as they took a rare moment of rest. "I was taught that humans were primitive, but your adaptability is impressive." Chen smiled, her eyes tired but warm. "We've had to be. It's how we've survived this long." Their respite was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the base, signaling the approach of an Elysian battle fleet. Koss's blood ran cold as he recognized the configuration. "It's High General Theos," he said, his voice tight. "He's found us." The battle that followed was brutal and swift. Human fighters darted between massive Elysian warships, buying time as transports ferried civilians to the relative safety of Amalthea's underground caverns. Koss watched from the command center, his heart pounding as he witnessed acts of heroism he never thought possible from humans. Pilots sacrificed themselves to shield evacuating transports. Ground troops held the line against overwhelming odds, allowing their comrades to retreat. In the chaos of the fight, Koss found himself with a clear path to an undamaged shuttle. For a moment he hesitated. He could return to the Elysian fleet, to the life he had known. But as he looked back at Chen and Porter, coordinating the desperate defense, he knew he couldn't abandon them. Koss made his choice. He sprinted not toward escape, but toward the thick of the battle. "Commander!" he shouted over the din of explosions. "I know how to disable Theos's flagship." Porter's eyes widened, then narrowed with determination. "What do you need?" "A small strike team. We can exploit a weakness in their shield generator. If we take it out, your forces might have a chance." Minutes later, Koss found himself leading a group of human soldiers through the wreckage of the battlefield. They moved with a precision that surprised him, following his instructions without hesitation. As they approached the looming bulk of Theos's ship, Koss felt the surge of something unfamiliar. It wasn't until later that he recognized it as hope. The strike team fought their way through the ship's defenses, Koss's insider knowledge proving invaluable. When they reached the shield generator, Koss didn't hesitate. He input the override codes himself, watching with grim satisfaction as the massive ship's defenses flickered and died. The tide of battle turned swiftly after that. Without their flagship's protection, the Elysian fleet found itself outmaneuvered by the smaller, more agile human ships. As Theos's forces retreated, a ragged cheer went up from the survivors on Amalthea. In the aftermath, Koss stood with Chen and Porter, watching the last of the Elysian ships disappear into hyperspace. He felt lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "There's something you should know," he said, turning to face them. "There are others like me in the Empire, a secret faction who question our leader's methods. If we could make contact with them..." Porter's eyes gleamed with the first real hope Koss had seen since their escape from Helios 5. "That could change everything. Koss, do you think you could reach out to these rebels?" Koss nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known before. "I can try. It won't be easy. But if there's a chance to end this war..." As the battered human fleet prepared to leave Amalthea, searching for their next refuge among the stars, Koss found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with those he once called enemies. Chen squeezed his hand, a silent gesture of support and trust. Koss looked out at the vast expanse of space before them, no longer seeing it as a realm to be conquered, but as a frontier of possibility. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he had found his place among these resilient, determined humans. A new dawn, the human fleet drifted through the inky void of space, a ragtag assembly of ships bearing the scars of recent battles. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Koss stood beside Commander Porter, studying a holographic star chart. "Alter Prime," Koss said, pointing to a small, unremarkable dot. "It's a desert world, barely a blip on the Empire's radar. We should be able to regroup there without detection." Porter nodded, his face etched with weariness. "Set a course," he ordered the navigator, "and pray we don't have any more surprises." As the fleet limped toward their destination, Koss spent hours hunched over comm terminals, sending carefully coded messages into the ether. On the third day of their journey, a response came. "I've made contact," Koss announced, his eyes bright with excitement. "Her name is Verena. She leads a growing faction of Elysian rebels." Chen, who had been monitoring Koss's vital signs, looked up sharply. "Can we trust her?" Koss met her gaze. "We have to try." Alter Prime loomed before them, a sphere of burnt orange and deep red. As the ships touched down on the planet's dusty surface, Koss felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The meeting with Verena took place in an abandoned mining outpost. She was tall and lithe, with piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through Koss as Porter laid out the human situation. Verena listened impassively. "Why should we risk our necks for you?" she asked when Porter finished. Koss stepped forward. "Because I've seen what these humans are capable of," he said, his voice low and intense. "They showed me compassion when they had every reason not to. They fight not for conquest, but for freedom, for all sentient life." Verena's eyes narrowed, but Koss saw a flicker of something in their depths, hope, perhaps, or recognition. "Very well," she said at last. "We'll provide you with supplies and intelligence. In return, you'll help us undermine Theos's forces from within." As they shook hands, sealing their tentative alliance, a high-pitched whine split the air. Koss's blood ran cold as he recognized the sound of an Elysian stealth fighter. "Incoming!" Porter shouted, but it was too late. The wall exploded inward, showering them with debris. Through the smoke, a figure emerged, a figure Koss recognized with horror. Xus, one of Theos's elite assassins. "Traitor," Xus snarled, his eyes fixed on Koss. What followed was chaos. Xus moved with inhuman speed, cutting down rebels and humans alike. Koss and Chen found themselves cornered, backs against a crumbling wall. "My orders are to eliminate you and any who would aid these vermin," Xus said, raising his weapon. A burst of plasma fire erupted from behind the assassin. Verena's rebels had regrouped, launching a desperate counterattack. In the confusion, Chen grabbed Koss's arm and pulled him toward an exit. They ran through twisting corridors, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. As they rounded a corner, Koss saw Verena engaged in hand-to-hand combat with Xus. Even as he watched, the assassin's blade found its mark. Verena fell, clutching her side. Koss moved to help her, but Chen held him back. "We have to go," she shouted, torn. Koss met Verena's eyes. She nodded once, her meaning clear. "Go. Leave. Fight on." As they fled the outpost, Koss's mind raced. Verena's sacrifice, Xus's brutality, the fragile alliance now stained with blood, it all crystallized into a burning resolve. Back aboard the human flagship, Koss pored over star charts and tactical readouts. He barely noticed when Chen brought him a meal or when Porter came to check on his progress. "Here," Koss said finally, pointing to a cluster of systems. "Theos's main fleet will be resupplying at this shipyard. If we strike now, while they're vulnerable..." Porter studied the display, his expression grim. "It's risky," he said, "but it might be our only shot." The attack on the shipyard was unlike anything Koss had ever experienced. Human fighters darted between massive Elysian cruisers, their nimble maneuvers guided by Koss's insider knowledge. Explosions bloomed in the void as capital ships fell to precision strikes. Koss found himself in the thick of the action, coordinating rebel Elysian forces from a commandeered shuttle. As he called out attack vectors, he caught sight of Chen's fighter executing a daring run against a dreadnought's engines. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Koss watched helplessly as Chen's ship was caught in a tractor beam. He saw her eject, saw the Elysian boarding parties converging on her position. "No!" Koss shouted, but it was too late. Chen vanished into the bowels of an enemy ship. As the battle raged around him, Koss felt something shift deep within his core. The woman who had shown him kindness, who had opened his eyes to a new way of thinking, was now in the hands of those who would show no mercy. Koss gripped the shuttle controls, his eyes sharp and unwavering.